lot of the videos that I've peeled off, like Messi, 30 million views, Taylor Swift, I've done 30 million views.
So if you were gonna put words to what that formula is, what would you say?
This might rub people the wrong way, but like the key is
This is my first ever real YouTube video.
We got my guy, Kallaway, in the building. 430,000 followers across TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat. Close to 1 billion views across social media. You've gone viral over 50 times.
Let's get into the story framework. There's 5 pieces: the hook, the context, the conflict, resolution, and then last dab. So I'll go through each of them. The hook, everybody hears the hook. They're like, the hook, everyone's talking about the hook. But the way to get videos to go really viral, the last thing you leave somebody with needs to hit them with like,
You've now quit your job and you're a full-time creator. There's a lot of people out there that it makes sense why they should leave. They still struggle. I'm curious, was there a difficulty in handing in that final notice of I'm out?
No, not at all. I wanted out of there, dude, from the second. I think if you have between 6 and 12 months reasonable expenses, that's all you need to go.
So people are getting all these views, but it's not making them money. Talk to me about the brand deals.
If you really want to know the behind the scenes, this is what I think is going on. Not to blow anyone's spot, but fuck it. I think what happens,
I think there's a lot of people out there that it would be a dream, an absolute dream, if they could use their personality and their interests and combine that to make a living, build an audience, and just get cool opportunities from those two components. Not only are you doing it, you're being completely transparent with how you're doing it. And so when I texted you and I was like, this is what the episode's going to be about, I'm like, the blueprint of productizing yourself and your interests in an excruciating level of detail that no one really does.
Almost too much, you could
argue.
Too
much detail. But it's good, you I think, and we even said this when we spoke earlier, it's so many of the people that you look at who are on a really high level, they can't really speak in any level of detail to someone who's starting out. And it's because they're so far removed from that stage.
Yeah.
So here's where I want to begin. Let's go back 12 months ago.
All the way back.
All the way back. You have not created a single piece of short form video content. What gets you started? What makes you start doing that?
Yeah. So maybe I'll take it back even a little bit further to set the context for that.
Yeah.
So basically, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Went to school, didn't know what I was going to study. Studied all types of different business, basically accounting, finance, entrepreneurship, you name it. I was like, I don't know what I want to start, but let me just get a smattering of different skill sets.
Yeah.
So started there. I co-founded a company my senior year of college. We raised angel funding. We chased that for a year, failed big time, but it was enough to give me the entrepreneurial itch where I knew this is what I should be doing. I had gotten a job offer to go to Kallaway Consulting before we started that company. And so I kind of had that in the back pocket. First lesson is if you're going in, you want to go all in. You don't really want to hedge and have a backup plan. So I had a backup plan, which caused me to make certain decisions along the way in that early startup that were more conservative or I didn't have a long-term mindset at that time. I was like, all right, we'll give this a year. And if it doesn't work, I'll go to Kallaway Consulting, which is the opposite mindset you want to have. But it is what it is. So we failed at that. Sold the assets of the company, but the sale wasn't we didn't benefit huge financially from it.
Yeah.
Went to Kallaway Consulting, first hour in, I was like, I hate this. This is not for me. And at that time, a lot of my early 20s was untraining a lot of the training, the conventional educational training that you get. So I'm from Ohio. So everything I had gotten piped into my brain at that time was go get a good job, be on the job path, stay at the job for a long time, climb the ladder, right? That's what society's designed to pump into you. And I hadn't really been exposed to this entrepreneurial content at the time. So there's this push and pull of do the conventional path, from parents and friends versus me inside, don't do it. So I think it's helpful to have that context. So I went to Kallaway Consulting. I gutted it out for 2 years, which, I would have loved to have left the second the first second hour, but I gutted it out for 2 years, tried to leave, and ultimately was between just leaving and going on my own or finding something else inside Deloitte that was more entrepreneurial. So I stumbled upon this this small kind of group they incubated, and through fortuitous bounces, I ended up like running that group. Like basically I had control of a startup that was just me inside Deloitte with like full backing and budget, starting from zero with no like ingrained ideals for what it had to be. So it's kind of like a dream scenario if you want to build something inside a company. At that time, like I didn't really realize the benefits or not of doing that. So kind of for the next year or two, I worked hard on that to try to grow it. I grew it from like 0 to 6 million in revenue over 3 years, pretty much like by myself with a team of 2 or 3 people. And, you know, for all intents and purposes, it was like a pretty good swing at like internal entrepreneurship. Along the way though, I was always doing stuff on the side. So my whole goal was like, as long as I'm at Deloitte, let's try to minimize the amount of time I'm spending at Deloitte and maximize the amount of time on side projects and like get something working. And my plan was always like, once something's working, leave. And so, am I allowed to curse on this, or do you?
You can say whatever you want.
So I was like, get the fuck out of there. So that was my plan. So the first thing I tried was music. So like we were talking about before, I used to freestyle in college. I kind of self-wrote, produced, mastered my first album, my first couple years at Deloitte. So kind of like was working, traveling, crazy consulting hours, would come home at the hotel at midnight, write a song. I did that like every day for 100 days and then put together an album that I released. So that's kind of the first like, should I be a musician? And kind of took that as far as I felt like emotionally I could go. I started getting like pretty depressed with the whole music thing, which we can go into. But so that was my first attempt. I launched a podcast where I was interviewing founders. So went down that rabbit hole a while. Tried to build a morning brew for wellness. So like imagine everything morning brew is, but I tried to reskin it for just wellness content. Worked on that for a while. I even went in the Web3 wave. We tried to build a lifestyle brand on Web3 rails. So tried a bunch of things, but the reason I go into those things is my plan was always work at Deloitte during the day, use the money and free time to fund the side pursuits, get something working and leave. That was always the kind of the blueprint, we'll say, up to that point. And it got to a point after like 4 or 5 failed projects where, you know, variety of execution, we'll say, but like some of them were good swings, but went nowhere. I kind of took a step back and I was like, okay, what's not working? Is it me not going all in? Is it bad ideas? Is it bad execution? Like what's not working? And the answer was that when you think about product and distribution, I had no distribution. I had no owned distribution. So for any of those projects, I never got to the point where I wanted to pour money into ad dollars, so like paid acquisition, because I felt like they weren't ready yet. But I had no earned distribution, no free acquisition channel. So I wasn't really getting good signal of like, are these even working or not before I would churn out. So I kind of thought, okay, this was 12 months ago, right? So I was like, let's pause, back up. Let me go build the distribution first, which is through content, right? Let me build a huge audience that trusts me, that likes the things I like. And then I think that will bear fruit and show what product I should actually build, which sounds like now in today's everybody's building their own media company and trying to funnel that traffic to businesses. Like that sounds obvious now, but even a few years ago, that wasn't really that obvious of a playbook. So that's what I did. So 12 months ago, I was like, all right, and we can go through the framework of like evaluating which media channel to go down. Cause it was really between, do I make shorts? Do I go back into the podcast realm? Do I make medium form YouTube? Do I try to like write with a newsletter? Do I make short form writing Twitter? Like there's a lot of channels you can go down. I picked short form video for a very specific purpose. And that's kind of what I did. So I was like, I had never really used Premiere ever before. I had filmed myself on podcasts and like had been freestyling. So I kind of understood how to like tell a story verbally, but I'd never filmed a short form video. And then, I was like, let's just run at this. Like, what would it look like to actually run at this hard? And I was like, let's do a video a day during the week and just pump them out. And I think it took me like 30 videos before one got to 1 million views. And then all it took was one video, I think like 70,000 views, my first one that got like any bump. That's all it took. Just one signal that I was onto something. And then we've been at it since then.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, you know what? Before we get into all of the content stuff, you introduced kind of like an interesting point, which is I think a lot of the times when you think about entrepreneurship, we literally think starting my own company. The intrapreneurship thing is actually it's interesting, and I think there's not as much discussion of it. And I'm sure it could be like an applicable route or a suitable route for a group of people. I'm curious, like, let's start with that. Like, how did that even, if I'm like inside a big company And I wanted that look because I think to a lot of people, that would be like the ideal.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like I have the security of like this big company and like a playground where I can just try stuff without being like homeless.
Yeah.
And making no money, but I can still kind of scratch that like entrepreneurial itch of like, I'm leading something, ton of responsibility. It's kind of my direction. How, if there's any lessons from that experience, like how could someone even get that look? Like, how did it come about? This episode is brought to you by Free Agency. If you want to take your career to the next level, Free Agency is a company that you should check out. They manage and represent talent in the tech industry, and they provide you with a dedicated talent agent to help you find, engage, and win top of market roles that will maximize your earning potential. No more leaving money on the table. Stop job searching alone and start building your dream career today with Free Agency. Anyway, back to the show.
And I can kind of frame like, the truth is, if you're really entrepreneurial, like if you have that dog in you, entrepreneurship is just procrastination. And the reason why is because it's just a hedge, right? The idea behind entrepreneurship, when you go work for a big company, if you're entrepreneurial and you want to do that first, there's only two things you're really looking for. One is a network. So like other smart people that happen to be there that you can have like free access to. And the other is skill development. So like, can I sharpen the skills I need to go do this on my own? The truth with entrepreneurship, unless you do it at like a real tech company, is the skills you're learning really bad habits. Cause like the product people at Deloitte, for example, are not real product people. So I wasn't really learning it wasn't the truth about how you build product and like iterate and go get customer feedback. This was more like corporate product, which is not like, to be fair, it's not really real. So the skills I was learning weren't that applicable. Like there was some overlap, but not really. And from a networking perspective, most of the people in a big company don't want to go and do entrepreneurship. So you're not, at Google, you can find good people, but like at other companies, you're just not going to find the type of people you want as an entrepreneur. So that's like what you tell yourself is like, hey, this is a perfect hedge. I can get paid 150 grand a year, earn skills and meet people. Like it's perfect. And then I'll go do my own thing. What ends up happening is you don't get the skills you want. You don't meet the people you want. You earn the salary, get golden handcuffs and never leave. Like that's the truth.
Yeah.
So I would say though, if you're at like a Google or a huge tech company that actually fosters like true entrepreneurship via product, then it's a really great way to like dip your feet in. I think that's where Google's like 20% rule comes in. I don't know if they do it anymore, but they used to have a program where 4 days a week you work on Google stuff. And then the fifth day, 20% of your week, you can kind of like come up with any project. I think it still has to be like for Google tangentially, but you can work on whatever you want. That's pretty dope because there's so many technical Google engineers and product managers that you can collaborate with. And then you can spin it out on your own, right? So that's like a good like hack to try it out before you go.
Yeah.
But what I had, it was really helpful because when I was 24, I didn't know anything. And so having to own something from my own and grow it from 0 to 6 million, even if the revenue I earned was like internally routed, not necessarily me going to the market, but like me selling internally, it was still like a really good way to earn skills and grow skills. But I quickly tapped out on that after maybe a year. So I would advise anybody who's like wants to jump, but is holding on to this like golden scenario hedge. It's not really what you think.
Yeah. You know what's actually interesting? It reminds me of Kamara Usman, UFC. He was a champion. He's not anymore. But he's like a Nigerian fighter. And there was a certain point in his life, he went all in on like, I'm going to be UFC.
Yeah.
Get into the UFC. And he says this thing. He's like, I decided that I had plan A and then I had plan B. And plan B was to make plan A work.
Yeah.
And like, that's kind of like the thought process is, there's a certain risk, I guess, that comes with being an entrepreneur. And so you can't like half-ass it. Like you kind of have to be all the way in.
On that point, like you need the fight or flight instincts to kick on for certain stuff to happen, for like your urgency to pick up. You can't fight or flight. Like by definition, fight or flight doesn't kick on when you're not in a fight. So if you're not all in, if you have a hedge, if you have this other thing, you won't be in fight or flight mode, meaning you won't be scrappy, you won't be urgent, you won't like, work till 3 a.m. to finish the thing you need to finish to get the client when you're owning your own business and that's all you're doing. So a thing that a big mistake I made was having the hedge. Now, like there's levels to it. Like if you're broke and have no money and you go all in and you end up failing, like you're gonna have to go move in with your parents or like find something to do. But if the level of money you need to actually go all in is much lower than people think. I was kidding myself with this before. I think a lot of people do as well. You really need to be all in, because the other reason is the active ideas you have in terms of like, I want to solve X problem, I'm going to channel my mindset to it. You can get those ideas whether you're hedging or not. It's the subconscious ideas that you don't get when you're hedging. Meaning when I was at Deloitte, even if I was spending 6 hours a day and then I was spending my other 6 on whatever my side hustle, there's 6 hours in the day where my subconscious can't run free and solve problems for my side hustle because I'm dealing with like corporate nonsense. You have to go all in to free up every like brain cell, every neuron in your brain to just be like working towards this goal, your passion. So that's another thing that you don't really realize that until you go all in once. And now I'm never going to stop because I'll be able to compound the momentum so much faster now that I have all energy, all resources on this one thing.
Yeah, actually the way that I agree with what you're saying. The way that I would put it as well is a lot of running a business is actually like self-improvement.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, it's difficult to have the level of improvement you need when you're in a comfort zone. Like if you're comfortable, no one ever got better just being comfortable.
Yeah, there's no urgency to improve.
There's no urgency. And so the beliefs thing is such an interesting thing. So I think people don't think about it enough. But like, that's actually, if we're talking about where you should start, that's kind of where you should start. Because I'll hear a lot of people that will say things or they'll ask me questions even about like starting a podcast or any of this stuff. And you can feel the procrastination in the question.
Yeah.
Like they want so much information before there's any action. I'm like, you're already kind of thinking about it wrong.
Yeah.
You need to go and do it.
Yeah.
And then the questions, like the answers almost become obvious from the data, which is like your experience.
And the reason they're doing that is because they don't have the self-belief. They're trying to hedge and procrastinate because they don't want to come to the realization that they don't know what they don't know. The truth is like success metrics are a lagging indicator. The leading indicator is self-belief. So like if you look at anyone who's listening to this, if they look at what I've put together so far, like I'm less than 1% on the journey. Like you could argue like I haven't succeeded yet. I've made a lot of traction, a lot of strides, and like a lot will come. But I have such delusional self-belief in myself already that it will come. It's just a matter of how long and what route I take of the tree. But it's coming. And that, if you like hear me, you can hear this like calmness in my self-belief. It's not maybe it'll work. It's like, it's going to work. Like, and I know it will. You have to have that self-belief before you go. Otherwise, exactly what you said, you're going to end up doing the vanity stuff that doesn't actually move the needle forward and you'll get frustrated.
Yeah. And the thing is as well, actually, I think that's such a good point, the self-belief, but it's also, I found for me personally, at least, it's something that is compounding and building as I get more momentum. So like, as I learn more things, and to be honest, I remember one of my mentors said this to me the day I quit my job. He said, your first goal is just to survive. Like you just don't want to have to go back to your job. He said that's the number one thing that kills like entrepreneurs. They have to go back. Yeah. So you just want to stay in the game long enough that you can get good or the thing that you're doing can work. And every day that I keep on this path, it's like the belief is building. Yeah. And like the identity of like, I'm this person is building. I think there is a certain foundation of belief that I was working off already that I thought I was going to make it. Yeah. But now it's like, it's building like 0.1% every day. Yeah.
Well, that's also like, I actually think it's really helpful to go work a job you hate for a year because I forget who said that. Someone said something along these lines, but like, I think it was Hormozy maybe. It's like, when a tiger's chasing you, you're going to run faster. And for me, the tiger is, I hated my job. Like I hated it and I'm not going back there. I have the battle scars from it in my mind. And I'm like, I will do anything to not go back there. If you never took a job and you were kind of like spoon-fed growing up and then you started your company right away, like out of school, you never took a job, you don't really have like a fight. There's no Bowser behind you blowing fireballs, you know? So it's super helpful to work even for like 6 months, just to like grow that, hatred almost for the corporate job.
Such a good point. It gives you, you know what it is? It gives you like perspective, which is sometimes when I think if you're doing anything that's just not traditional, that's like a bit different, there's moments where the shit fucking sucks. Like it's not working and it's frustrating and you're tired and you're not getting the validation of your regular paycheck to make it all seem good.
Yeah.
And in that moment, you need the perspective of having felt the alternative.
Exactly.
Which is like, no matter how bad this is, I've done the other thing and it wasn't it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep doing this.
The friction to quit goes up proportionally to how bad your situation was before. That's why, like, I think a lot of people will say like immigrants are the best startup founders because it was so bad for most of them before. Their friction is so high. They'll never quit. Their friction to go back is so high versus like, you know, if you worked a medium job, your friction's not that bad. If you worked a really easy job, the friction's super low. You'll be like, okay, I'll quit this. It's not working. I'll go back. It's what you were saying before. You just need to not quit long enough for it to start working. That's it. That's your only goal. And once it works. You're good. Just let it compound.
Yeah. You know what? This is, I want to get into the content stuff, but this is an analogy I think about. I remember, I think it was the 2018 NBA playoff run. I remember being in the UK. I think that was when LeBron had like a pretty bad Cavs team and he got them to the finals.
Yeah. I'm a huge Cavs fan. I'm from Ohio, so I know well. Was that
like
when Kevin Love got hurt in the early series? He got his arm pulled out, or was that the second?
It was his final season before going to the Lakers.
Okay, yeah.
And the one where JR like messed up.
Yeah.
And all that. And I remember watching these Cleveland games as they were going through the East. And it was like every team they went against, 'cause I think they went to 7 games with the Pacers in round 1.
Yeah.
Every team they played, the opposing team was better than them, like completely outplaying them. But they would just stick around like long enough, get to the fourth quarter, and then they had the best player by far and he took over.
Yeah.
And then I felt like there was so much to learn from that, which is like, just stick around. Like, and you'll see it even in the NFL. There'll be a team that they're outplaying in every aspect, offense, defense, special teams, the opposing team. But the team that's losing, they just stick around. Maybe it's like 10-14, 10-3. They stick around.
Yeah.
Fourth quarter comes, they have the best player or whatever.
Yeah.
They make some plays and it turns. And it's actually very similar, I think, on the business end, which is like just sticking around, just keeping the learnings going. And then when it's your moment, you can capitalize.
Yeah, exactly. That's the Jack Butcher graph where it's like, this is pointless. You just all of that until the spike is sticking around. That's it. It's just pick a lane, be consistent, stick around. And like you're getting punched in the face when meaning like no one's paying attention to your stuff. Just stick around, and you'll have a spike. The reason I tried short form video is like maybe a transition into the content stuff is it was easier to trick myself to stay because I knew it'd be faster to get a spike that something was working. So I knew like I have enough willpower that I'll stick to something for a decade, but any human wants some feedback loop showing it's working. Like very few people are Mr. Beast level delusional where for 3 years, this dude's getting no views or 4 years, however many years it was. And he's just posting into the void, nothing coming back. Very few people have the discipline to do that. So I thought, all right, why don't I hack my brain instead of trying to see if I have the discipline? Let's just pick a lane that's going to give me signal quicker, like daily posting, the algorithm's pushing me. There are a lot of like tailwinds too. But that way, like I said before, as soon as I had one little glimmer that I was onto something, there was something that I was providing that the market wanted, that's all I needed to be like, I'm doing this forever. But until you get that little glimmer, it's very hard to be delusionally, disciplined. So that's like another little brain hack. The whole really this whole game is just how do I hack my own brain to keep me in? Like you were saying, we're saying the same thing over and over, but it's true. It's like, just stay in. And if you need to hack your brain, if you need to lie to yourself, if you need to create conditions where you can't get out, whatever you have to do to stay in the game, that's your only job. Yeah.
You know what? Here's the problem I see when people ask me anything about starting, even with podcasting. And they'll ask questions like, oh, is it too late to start a podcast? Or is it too saturated? Or should I be doing short form? Or should I be doing Twitter? Or should I be doing LinkedIn? People have like this uncertainty of what to do, of like where to start.
Yeah.
And all the advice, if someone answers that question without any context, they're just doing you a disservice.
Right.
And you actually made this point in one of your newsletter posts, which is like, there is not a universal playbook that like, I can just give you the steps, you can plug it in and it's going to work the same way it did for me, for you. The playbook is figuring out your playbook.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be interesting when it comes to the question of like, which medium of content do I start with? I think what's more interesting than giving a definitive answer of like, do short form or do a podcast or do LinkedIn or do Twitter, it's what is the framework of thinking that you use to decide to do short form?
Yeah.
And I guess it seems like in your case, it was like, what's the thing that I will just keep doing?
Right. Because the real answer is, which is like a little high level, so we can go even more tactical, but the real answer is pick whatever is the fastest path to where you can be authentically yourself and original, and whatever format that is, pick that. Now, each platform has pros and cons in terms of the feedback you'll get to determine if it's working. But for example, if you feel awkward on video and you just can't let yourself be original, be authentic. Not original is a bad target. Like, let's say be authentic. Like, if you can't look into a camera and be authentically yourself, and it's very hard, then you shouldn't start with video, because you'll give up sooner than if you were talking into a microphone without your face on it or writing. So that's like one way to look at it, is just, it's a little high level and like not super helpful to people, because, you know, it's hard to know like, what will make me authentic? Like, it's kind of a hard question to answer, but like, that's one frame. The other frame is to be like super tactical and data oriented with it. So I was talking about this on Bilal's show too. There's really 4 buckets. There's short form video. There's long form video. We'll say YouTube, like 15, 20 minute YouTube videos. There's audio, which is podcasts. And then there's written. You also have like images, I guess, on Instagram, but let's say not to that, because Instagram throttled that away. So you kind of have four paths. We can go through each one and like talk about the pros and cons if you want, if that's helpful to people. But really, like, the other way to look at it from a data-driven perspective is take each bucket and be like, okay, what are the pros of this? What are the cons of this? What is the time in required to make 1 unit of content? What will I get out of 1 unit of content? Am I okay with those trade-offs? And you go through each bucket and you kind of create this pro-con, and you're like, all right, this is what I have in front of me. Let's pick one and go. And then you don't second guess that choice until you see traction from that one. So one of the reasons short form video is so helpful is because, like I mentioned before, you can see traction faster. You can get signal back faster. Like with podcasts, let's say you're posting once a week, the longer between episodes, the slower the feedback loop for sure, and the harder it will be to grow. There's just less like informational context for people to consume. So if you did a podcast once a month, that's going to grow slower than once a week. That's going to grow slower than daily, all things held equal, because there's just less for people to consume. There's less for people to share. The flywheel will just spin slower. So you can go all the way down on that spectrum of like frequency. A person who's just on Twitter can tweet 10 times a day. That's the most frequent. And then like writing a novel is like once every 2 years or like once every decade. That's the most infrequent. There's so much in between there. I think the most important thing, like we've been saying, is fastest path to authenticity and what's going to allow me to get the feedback required to keep me in the game. So for me, I had done podcasting before and it was extremely hard to grow. There's a lot of reasons I stopped doing it, but one of them was I wasn't getting any signal. Like I was stuck at the same, like barely creeping up over and over. And that's why you hear a lot of podcasters say it took me 5 to 7 years to like actually see a tick up. So for me, I was like, all right, I've been down that path. I want faster feedback than a podcast. So I want to do one, but I don't want to start with one. So that's kind of how I ruled out the audio format. That, and like, it's really hard to grow because inherently audio there's no like feed, there's no algorithm pushing it. It's only peer-to-peer sharing is really the only way for audio to grow. So that was out. Written, I also had like written newsletters, but again, those are really hard to grow because people don't there's no algorithmic feed other than like the Substack homepage, but there's not a lot of people using that. So there's no algorithmic feed pushing that. You can tweet about it, but every platform is shifting towards like de-incentivizing people to post links. So again, there's like my reason for not doing the written first, except for Blueprint, which I can get into like why I did. I don't even care if that grows. That's just more of a documentation. And then you're kind of left with the 2 video options. You've got YouTube, which is the golden goose because you can make a ton of money from it. you have the YouTube home feed, which is like actually how people get recommendations. So you've got an algo pushing it. And then you have shorts. So for me, I was like, if I look at making 1 minute videos 5 times a week or one video per week that's 15 minutes, which would I rather do? And for me, I sat down and tried to make YouTube videos and it just didn't feel natural to me. Like I felt super inauthentic in front of the camera. So I was like, one reason I picked shorts was YouTube didn't feel natural. The second reason is I was like, shorts is going to be the hardest to compete for attention in video because there's so many. So I was like, if I can get attention in shorts, I can get attention anywhere. So it's almost like run at the hardest thing possible from that perspective. And then third is I had the algorithmic tailwinds. Instagram, like TikTok changed everything. And so TikTok and Instagram at the same time are pushing every short form that's coming on there. So it's like, if I have, you can either swing a bat with a donut on it or you can swing a bat without it. Like I picked the way without it because I want my bat speed to go up. So that's what short form is to me.
Yeah. You know what? You actually described it perfectly. And it's funny because I'd never broken it down like that in my mind. But that is actually the exact way that you figure out where to start, which is like, number one, you think about what medium can I most authentically convey my personality, whatever I'm doing.
Yep.
That has to be the most important. And then number two is how quickly can I get feedback?
Yeah.
Because the whole game, and I remember, I think it was it Zach Pogrov that said this? He said, it's not about 10,000 hours, it's about 10,000 iterations, which is like, the 10,000 hour rule is a thing we always hear, which is like, you just need to have a lot of time spent doing the thing.
Yeah.
If you do the wrong thing 10,000 hours, it's still wrong.
Yeah.
What you need is the 10,000 iterations. You need the small deviations in each test.
Exactly.
To get to the thing that's right. And so you need both. I think the thing that's interesting for me when I reflect on my journey is you're right about podcasting. So hard to grow and very difficult really to get good feedback on a podcast.
Yeah.
And the feedback is just slower because you're not getting as many views as like the
Right.
video that blows up. The spikes aren't as exaggerated, so it's harder to see the signal.
Yeah. But once you have it, it's extremely defendable. That's the other side of it.
It's a moat.
Like
yeah.
I'm about to launch a podcast as well because I love the medium. It's just I was like I just can't start there because it will take too long to get signal.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? We broke it down like 1 and 2. So 1 is the authenticity, 2 is the how quick you can get signal. My 1 was so strong, it like completely overwhelmed 2.
Yeah.
Where podcasting, because I had tried to do like tweets, like try to grow on Twitter. I hated the process of writing.
Yeah. And
Like-
that's signal enough, right? Like as soon as you realize you don't like it, you're like, all right, that's out.
Yeah.
Versus what most people do is like, oh, like this person on Twitter is making $500,000 a year doing it. So like, this is the way, right? That's what most people think is they look at someone they admire and they're like, I need to copy their framework, even though they know inside they don't like that medium. That's never going to work. Because even if it worked for 1 year and you made 500 grand, you won't have the durability to do it for 20 years. And so that money's going to run out eventually. It's like, you're not trying to satisfy a short-term outcome. At least I'm not. I'm trying to play a really long game. And the only way you play a long game is to find a game you like to play.
Yeah. So it's so true. And the thing is, I think people they ask the question like, what is working? That is irrelevant. It's about what is going to work for you.
Exactly.
Everything is case specific.
Exactly.
Okay, you know what? Let's move it on because I'm curious. So you do the short form thing.
Yeah.
You're still working your job at this point.
Yeah. So I knew I was the first like 30 shorts or first 20 shorts, I was like just throwing them out. And I was like, all right, it's just starting to become fun for me. Like I'm starting to dial in the process of like how to do it. And you got to realize like, I knew how to use a camera, but like, I didn't know how to edit. I don't know how to color grade, which I'm not even doing still. I don't know how to sync the audio. I don't know how to use Premiere. Like it takes a while to like get those things ironed out. So after 20, 30 videos, I start like enjoying the process more. And then I started to get signal. So I was like, I think there's something here. Like I grew I think there was like a 4 or 5 week period where I grew like 75,000 followers on TikTok and Instagram. Like it was nothing, then bam. And then as soon as the bam happened, I was like, all right, there's gonna be something here where I'm gonna leave and do this. I just don't know when. But I was basically throttling down my effort at the company and throttling up my effort on the side, basically until I couldn't do both, right? Like until my mind share that was at the company was inhibiting my ability. Like I had a few long nights where I was working and I couldn't post a video, and that's all it took, where I was like, fuck this. Like I don't need to, like, I'm peeling off all these views and like getting all these brands to reach out. I don't need this job anymore.
Yeah, that's funny. I had exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what? I want to start with the nothing period.
Yeah.
So those first, and you know what, actually, let me pull up. I actually took down the stats.
Yeah,
and
take the stats.
I fucking love this. So this is what you said in your newsletter. You said 21st video on TikTok was the first to get 100,000 plus views.
Yeah.
41st video was the first to get 1 million. 121st was the first to get 5 million. 155th was the first to get 10 million. So it takes time and reps in the game.
Yeah.
Those first 20 videos where like nothing was really popping. What? Because let's be honest, like that's the graveyard, right?
Yeah, that sucks. It's
Like that's where everyone quits.
Yeah.
So like, what does video one even look like? Like, what are you doing?
Let's see.
Let's pull it out.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I cringe so hard at my early videos, which is a good sign, right? That's what people say is like, you're putting stuff out before like it's ready.
Yeah.
But to me at that time, I was like, these are as best I can do. And I was like actually okay with it, which is surprising because I have like a really high bar for quality. All right, while I scroll this down. Yeah, I think in the first, I don't know, there was something switched in my mind when I started doing this that was just like, this is gonna work, just don't stop. I don't know what it is, because I've done a lot of things before and I let myself stop doing them for I don't know what it was, but there was some signal, some subconscious signal that was just like, chase this and let it go. And I think a couple of my like earlier videos did do decent. So, all right, I'm back to the beginning.
You know, just quickly, that is like the perfect visual representation of what this is.
Yeah.
Is that you were talking for like 30 seconds and just scrolling.
Yeah.
Like it takes fucking time to get good.
It took time. Basically, like, so the business we were doing before I started making shorts was we were trying to build Kith on Web3 rails, which sounds insane, but our whole concept was like, imagine a lifestyle brand, Kith, Emilion Dor, but instead of like a couple of founders, imagine there was a small group of like 50 to 100 people who were all co-owners in the business, who all had like different specialties around apparel and fashion and could like come together to almost like crowdsource build a brand. That was our idea. And we were going to use NFTs as the way to like facilitate the ownership. So we were working on that for a while. We were like in the fashion world, in the apparel world for like a year and a half, let's say. So when I started making content, I was like, all right, the thing I know the best right now is that. So I made like, what makes Kith cool was a video I made that like did pretty well. I did the legend of Emilion Dor. I did something huge happen with Starbucks, like a Starbucks news story. I did more on why the Starbucks NFT program might work. So like you can see, it's like, it's still tangential to what I was thinking about at the time. And I kind of just started doing that. And I was like, I don't know. It's not that I don't see other people doing it, but it was just like the unique intersection of what I know, the way I tell it, and the way I edit. No one will be the same as that. So I was just like, let me just do this to sharpen the skill. Just at the beginning, it was like, how do I use Premiere? Like, how do I storytell? Because I believe storytelling online is the most valuable skill set you can possibly have. You can apply that to anything. You can sell your own products. You can sell other people's products. If you're a savant storyteller, you're infinitely valuable. So I was like, all right, let's become a savant storyteller. And that's how I started. The one that peeled off first was about FTX. Basically, a niche I found that was relatively untapped was I was taking super complex business happenings and distilling them down into simple videos. Now on Twitter, there's a lot of people taking super complex business happenings and distilling them down into threads. But the overlap of like Think Boys on Twitter and the people making videos on TikTok and Instagram, there's not a huge overlap. So I was like, all right, I can't get anything to resonate on Twitter because I'm basically just rinse and repeating what everyone else is saying. But there's a huge audience that wants this content over here on TikTok and Instagram that has no one making it. So that's what I started doing is like, FTX, what happened? Like, what the fuck happened to Sam Bankman-Fried? I broke that down. That video did like 2 million views. I think that was like the first one that got 1 million. And from there, it's not that every video I did was in that vein, but if you look back, a lot of the videos that I've peeled off, like Messi, 30 million views across both. Taylor Swift, I've done 30 million views across 5 videos. Like all of these are taking culturally relevant companies and people, break into something complex that happened to them, whether it was like a business deal or something, and breaking it down in simple terms that normal people can understand. And for some reason, that works. Like there isn't a lot of people doing that on short form video. Now we can talk about like, and I've wrote about this in my newsletter, that's great for getting views and like my engagement's super high and people are starting to like me. But strategically, is it smart for me to become a news source? I don't want to be that. Like I want to be a product beast. Like I want to build my own kith. Like I want to build real product businesses. So, you know, I kind of feel like there's a little disconnect there, but in the beginning, all you're looking for is a signal. And there was a signal there that there was a market need.
Yeah. Everything goes back to me for like, what is the framework? Like, what is the way of thinking about it? And so I think a lot of people have questions of like, where do I start? I don't know what to make videos about. And this is the thing that I think was very evident with where you started with the KIF stuff. Just choose something that you're hugely knowledgeable about.
Yeah.
There's something in your life that you can talk about for like centuries. Like you could just keep talking about this thing. Yeah. Like you're like, everyone probably has something that they're like in the top 1% in terms of knowledge on that topic.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it might be something that's like a bit weird. Like it's like, I don't even know, like the old trading cards or some shit.
Yeah.
But like, that's kind of where you start. Something that you can talk about easily. And then I think the other way that I like to think about it now with my content is like every video, let's just try something new.
Yeah.
Like at least one thing is different. And it can be small. Maybe it's the way that we did like the thumbnail or like the way that like which word we highlighted in the title, we capitalized something. Like just try one little deviation. Like you want to get I think the other thing that people do wrong, they don't experiment enough.
Yeah.
Like you need to get the iterations in the beginning. And this is what I've seen actually when I've spoken to anyone who's very successful with content. They think about it as one huge experiment. And they are constantly, even the people at the top are constantly experimenting. But to be honest, the people at the top, it's more difficult for them to experiment than the person who has no views. Because they have this audience that has an expectation on what they're going to see. So literally your competitive advantage as the new creator is you can iterate way faster, way in a much more like crazy fashion. Like you could have one video on fashion, the next one is sports, the next one is business, the next one is like work culture. Like you could do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
And no one is going to care because you're not known yet. And so you really have to like lean into that.
And I even do that now. It's like a lot of the conventional advice is like niche down, get a niche, have a niche. I don't really believe in that. I think you are the niche. Like I am the niche. I'm N=1. There's nobody with the unique combination of interests and passions that I have. So I always thought, let me just make videos about what I care about. I still do that now. I have a big following and like one day will be an AI tool I'm playing with. And the next day is a cultural icon. The next day is a brand. Like I'm just fucking around, to be honest. Like the way I think of it is like whatever's interesting to me in the moment, that's what I chase. Because I heard something on Rick Rubin's podcast. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's a tetragrammaton, which I guess means God or something. Weird name, but yeah, Rick Rubin's like a legend in music, and he was interviewing John Mayer. And John Mayer was talking about the way he makes music, makes songs. Like a lot of times he'll go into the studio, he's hunting. Like he's got nothing. He has nothing. He's like playing little riffs, little diddles. And then the minute he gets something, he's like, clear my schedule. I'm not leaving the studio until I finish the song, because he's like, when I go out those doors and come back, I'm a different person, and the energy around that song is different. I look at content, like making these videos, the exact same way. So when I sit down and I'm looking for signal, whatever grabs me, my best videos are when I just rip the whole video right there and I don't think twice about it. And that means whatever's grabbing me is not going to be in a niche, because I'm not reading one publication. I'm looking all over. And so anytime I've like premeditated a video and try to like really plan it out and like really overthink it never does well. Anytime the messy one, I was in the sauna listening to this group chat podcast. I heard them talk about the messy deal. I went right home, peeled it off. 30 million views. Like that's all it is just following your intuition for what's interesting. And then the hard part, which we can get into, is like translating why you think it's interesting into a story that people will actually resonate with. Like that is the hard part. For me, like if there's one mystical, magical part about what I do, I can take a kernel of an idea and have it recorded in like 30 minutes and write the thing so fast. I don't know what it is. My brain just works in that way. I've tried though, and we can go through like my storytelling framework or like one of them that works. I've tried to reverse engineer that so I can give it to people and be like, here's the pattern that I like. After making 10 of these, I looked at it, tried to reverse engineer the pattern, and then handed the story framework in my email to people. And that works sometimes, but there's a little bit of an element of like magic. It's the same way like when you make a podcast, if your brain immediately is like, here's how I should package it, and you just know, you can't really tell people like how you did that. You could try to reverse engineer different ways to think about the packaging, but there's a little bit of special sauce there. So that's the only special sauce. Everything else, as we've been saying, is like formulaic, and you can like really think through what to do.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of? It's like, I wrote this in my notes. I said, ingenuity is at the edges. So basically like and I've kind of learned this about the creative process. It's usually a combination of like a whole lot of factors all coming together in one moment.
Yeah.
And it's like the intersection of all of these circles, and right in the middle is where like the magic is, is where the original thought is. And you know, actually something, while it's on my mind, something really interesting that you said in one of your newsletters, because, and you know what, let's talk about some of the common things we hear about content creation. And I even say some of this stuff, which is like the established content creator who's gotten the billions of views and whatever. If they get on a video or on a podcast and you ask them, how do I get started? Or how should I be thinking about this? What's the mindset? They 99 times out of 100 will say, just be consistent.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is, part of the reason you're a beginner is because you don't know what truly matters yet. You haven't done enough experiments to know, like, here are the things that I actually have to nail in a video for it to be good. So you're kind of just trying a bit of everything. I'm curious, where do you land in terms of like, if you thought about what it took to be successful, like once it started working and it was clicking and the views were coming in, what was it that you were doing correctly? And maybe we can even bucket it out, like some of the factors that people commonly say, which is like, I guess the ideas, the packaging, just being consistent, and you just have to do a lot of it. Like, where does it ladder up in terms of what do you actually need to be successful? Yeah.
Well, I think the thing with consistency is what you were saying, Zach said, which is the whole reason you want to be consistent is so you can get more iterations. Consistency for consistency's sake doesn't work, right? Because if you're bad and then you're just bad a lot, you'll still be bad. So if you read the email, a lot of what I write about is like, and I didn't start writing. I wish I started writing that from week one period, like of making content. I started writing at week one of going full time, so at least we'll have that historically. But like a lot of what I write about is I don't know what to iterate on. So I'm to the point now where it's like, okay, the little things of like the audio sucks or the video's not straight or the editing could be better. Like I've fixed all those, and now I'm like sending it into the void. And it's not like there's a magic fairy that's like, hey, by the way, like you should probably change this for next time. Nobody's telling you what to change. It's just, does it resonate? Does it get shared? Does it get views or not? And so that's where like consistency, the whole point of consistency is that it forces you to do it enough to where you can start to notice what to improve after the initial stuff. Because the initial stuff, you know what to improve. You're just like, I need to do it. But once you get to a certain level, that's what consistency is for. So I kind of view consistency as like, if you're going to do something and you're not going to be consistent, you'll never win. So consistency is kind of like table stakes. I don't really think that's like step zero. So I wouldn't even look at consistency as what was the big trigger? Because if you're not consistent, it's not going to work. The big trigger, I think, is it really comes down. So I was writing about this last week. It's either originality of ideas or high execution. And we can go through the frame that I was just playing with that. I didn't think through it for like hours and hours. So maybe there's an edge case I didn't cover, but I think originality of ideas is the creme de la creme. Like that's the most important thing. And so if you think about who comes to mind when you think the most original ideas, for me, it's Mr. Beast. Like he comes up with the most original, crazy shit. And it is big production, but it's also very original. If you think about like putting a person aged 1 to 100 in a glass enclosure in like a warehouse, like that's pretty original. And so, it's no coincidence to me that he is the most followed, most viewed person on the planet, and he's the most original. On the other side, it's like there are people that are not original at all that execute extremely well. I'm trying to think of a good example without like ripping somebody, but there's examples where people execute so well and they're not really original and they do well. But I think the problem is when you're starting out, you're never going to be 10 out of 10 execution. You're always like climbing your way up. So the way to get traction is to try to be more original. And it's not like most people can't just sit and think like, what original ideas do I have today? You kind of have to just be authentic to your interests and try to connect dots in a way that you haven't seen. So sometimes I'll make videos that after I make them, I find people who had those takes. But at the time I was like, damn, I haven't seen this anywhere. Like this is a very original thought. And those are the ones that really resonate. Like I made a Netflix one a couple weeks ago where I was like, I think Netflix has a master plan to become Disney 2.0. Like just that alone, that little kernel alone, I was like, all right, that's a pretty original take. Like I haven't really seen that by any analyst. I haven't read anything about that. The video did how it did for a variety of other factors, but I think consistency allows you to train your brain to have more reps at trying to be original. And so your hit rate of originality goes up over time. That's I guess that's a good way to like summarize consistency.
There was actually, we did an episode yesterday. I don't remember exactly how the guest said it. He worded it really well, which is like, great ideas aren't really like made. They kind of come to you.
Yeah, it's true.
Like you're just like doing something. And a lot of the times it's when you're not even doing the task.
Yeah.
You're like in the shower and then suddenly it like hits you out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it's like this moment of inspiration. And so the thing is that you kind of, I think some people are trying to be original without being involved. Like you have to be doing the thing. Like that's where you start to kind of see where the gaps are, is when you're actually, and I think that's the way that you framed consistency is actually really good, which is like, that's the table stakes that like, it gives you the foundation that you can then start doing things really well.
Exactly.
It
channels it channels your attention towards the like slice of stuff you want. And then the way the dots connect, that's where originality comes from. But it's very hard to like purposefully connect disconnected dots. Like it's very hard to do that. That's why you hear people say like there's only so many original thinkers in the world. Original thinkers can think about a problem and connect disparate dots really well from like other places. They pull them together. I can do that sometimes, but more often than not, it's just I'm channeling energy towards the slice and different things come to me and then the key is I action them immediately. So like as soon as I have it, I go to the computer and I make the video. Like I don't mess around. Like I don't buy a domain name. I don't plan about. I don't like try to do some designs and then get to it later. Like as soon as that happens, I go. And that's another thing that's like a little bit, people don't really talk about that. I think Zach has had a good frame on this. It might've been on your show too. He's just like, when the inspiration strikes, sprint at it as hard as you possibly can, work on it till it's done and ship it. That's really it.
Yeah. Cause it's like, it's a moment. It's not always going to be there. It
exactly.
can be fleeting.
The confluence of all those ideas and you at that moment will never happen again. Maybe the confluence of those ideas will happen. Like you could think about something 3 days later, but you in that moment, the amount of energy you have, the passion you have for it, the schedule you have, the place you are in time, all those things will change 3 days from now. And the moment is probably going to be gone.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Let's carry on building this for people. So carry on building the blueprint. I like that.
And would it help to talk about like what the blueprint is and like why I started writing it this way?
Yeah. You know, before we get to that though, so I kind of want to build on the journey. So those first 20 videos, it's like you're just trying things. You're experimenting. You're looking for the signal. Like what's the spike? Like what's the thing that's out of the ordinary that I can then use of like, we found something, like we found gold. So here's my question. If we carry on, once you found the thing, so the Sam Bankman-Fried video, where does your mind go next, right? Because it's like, okay, I had one video that worked, but like, how are you kind of taking what worked there and then repackaging that into like a formula, like even your storytelling framework of like, okay, here's how we can do it again and again and again and again?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did was make 2 more Sam Bankman-Fried related videos. Because
Okay.
the thing is, like, when you're searching, if you like think about if you have a metal detector in sand and you're like nothing, and then you find something in the sand, the first thing you're gonna do is look in that area again. Like, so the first thing I did was, and I'm looking at the videos that I made right after. Like, very quickly after, I made 2 more about that. Like 2 of the next 3 were related, and one of those went viral again. So I was like, all right, am I just like a Sam Bankman-Fried guy at this point? Like, right. So you don't want to like, and then I made a third one 4 videos later that went 2.6 million views. So like I had a lot of content on this. And so the thing you have to do then is 2 things. One, try to reverse engineer the story framework. And the other is reverse engineer the theme. So that theme is kind of like complex business simplified, we'll say, or it's crypto. Like, it could be a couple things, but like it ended up being complex business simplified. And the story framework was, you're never going to believe this. Let me tell you what happened. A bunch of mini conflicts inside. You know, we don't know what's going to happen. Stay tuned. Like that was kind of the framework. So almost like news reporting, but in like an interesting way. So nothing too like crazy. But then if I look at the list of videos in terms of like what next went viral, I had one where I was like, I think personalized vitamins could be a good business idea, which is completely different from Sam Bankman-Fried. That one went viral. Another one was like, the Airbnb founder quit to launch a new startup. That one went viral. So it's kind of hard sometimes to see the signal because things are working, but you don't know why. And that's kind of the name of the game with shorts is like, I'm not gonna make 10 Sam Bankman-Fried videos over and over because eventually that story is gonna get played out. And so once the news cycle was done, there was no reason to do that. But I can kind of take some, it's hard. It's like I can take some kernels from it and try to reverse engineer. But I think the key is that rep put an arrow in my quiver of like, okay, that story works. So when I sit down to make another video, subconsciously my brain's like gravitating towards the thing that worked, right? That's what we're talking about with consistency is like, because I had made 20, 30 videos before, I had a few arrows in my quiver of like things that could work. And then when I sit down for the Airbnb video, I pull a couple and like those arrows get better as I get better. And so I get more dialed every single time.
I'm curious, like how in the moment is it versus like purely analytical? So once you get one that works, how much are you sitting down and being and analyzing like, oh, I use this line as the hook
None of that. It's all in the moment.
Okay, fair.
It's all intuitive, which is why it's hard for a beginner to hear me and be like, well, how do I do it then? Which is why I try to break things into these story frameworks after. Like, I don't go through the analytics to go through the analytics because I think it's all intuition, but to help others, which is like, that's why I write the blueprint to give all of it away for free, which we can get into. But like, to help others, I kind of need to go into the analytics and figure out what the formula could have been and just present it to people. Maybe it works for them, maybe it doesn't, but I don't ever do that in the moment.
Yeah. I was reading one of your, speaking of the blueprint, I was reading one of your editions and you were saying you'd done like a week of posting. You're like, several of the videos just didn't really hit.
Yeah.
And you make this joke, you're like, I still need to eat. Like, I need to put dinner on the table. And luckily for me, like, I know the exact formula for how to get something to go viral in short form video.
Yeah.
So if you were going to put words to what that formula is, what would you say?
Yeah, let's pull it up.
Let's do it.
Let's pull up I'm just going to pull it up so I have the notes so I can say exactly what I wrote before. So this is what I use. You're talking about what I use for the messy video?
Yeah.
So this is what I use for the messy video, which I think this is the most consistent story framework that's worked for me. Now, you may say like, okay, well, if you figured that out, like if you found the gold, why has every video you've ever made after that not gone viral? And the reason is a couple things. One, virality has a lot to do with what you try, but there's a lot of factors that are luck and like you can't control when the algorithm will pick it up. Did it get shared by someone notable? So there's some things you can't control. Two, my job is to try to experiment and find 10 of these so that I have a whole backpack full of stories that work. So I can't make every video the same exact formula because then it'll get dry. Like people watching my stuff will be like, oh, it's too predictable. And like the unpredictable nature of content is why people stick around. That's like why the dopamine fires. So I'm kind of like messing with it. The good news is at any time with the right topic, like usually some pop culture related topic, I can peel off 5 million views. Like if I want to at any time I can do that. Now, like we said before, there's strategically like, who I want to become and what I want my audience to be doesn't necessarily overlap perfectly with the people that would resonate. So like I can make a Taylor Swift video and go 5 million right now, but Taylor Swift fans and like who I want my audience to be, which is entrepreneurs, creators, business builders, because that's who I am. That's like what I want to build long-term for. Those don't really overlap. So every time I do the Taylor Swift thing, I'm just building more fandom in an area that I don't want to double down in. So it's kind of like, you know, it picks apart, but let's get into the story framework. So this is kind of how I laid it out. There's 5 pieces. There's the hook, the context, the conflict, resolution, and then last dab. So I'll go through each of them. So the hook, everybody hears the hook. They're like, the hook, everyone's talking about the hook. I hate like referencing it the same way everyone else does, but the way I think of the hook, there's 3 subparts to it. So at the beginning, if you go back to my beginning video, my early videos, I would do something that's very common with beginners where it's kind of, the first line is kind of like, I'm going to tell you about something cool today. And then the second line is when you get into it. Cut the, I'm going to tell you about something cool. The first thing you say needs to be like what you're talking about. So for the Leo Messi video, I forget exactly what it was, but it was like, Leo Messi just said no to $1 billion, something like that, right? So it's exact, like the first sentence you hear is something happened interesting. Then the second part of the hook is what I call the shocker. So you need to give some data point that supports that thing in a way that you'll never believe. So maybe the first sentence was like, I think it was Leo Messi just changed the business of sports forever. That was the first sentence. The second was he said no to $1 billion. So that's the shocker where it's like 1 billion, like why would he say no to that, right? So your brain is like, Leo Messi sports, he said no to 1 billion. Right now you're like, I know what it's about, but why the fuck did he do that? And you're like, you're wondering. Then the third sentence is the misdirection, I call, and this works every time. You get them leaning, it's kind of like boxing, right? You get them leaning, you hit them with the counter. Like you get them leaning one way and then you misdirect. So their brain is like, what? So for that video, it was like, Leo Messi just changed the business of sports forever. He said no to $1 billion. Like, but he made the best financial move he possibly could, because you're leaning like said no to $1 billion. He's probably going to talk about why that was a dumb move. And then I hit you with the misdirection, which is like, it was actually a really smart move. So now you're like so intrigued about it because you know what it's about enough to stay. If you're a Leo Messi fan or football fan, you know, but you're like confused. So that hook framework works every single time. So that's where I start. Then it's a dance between the context and the conflict, because this is like the meat of the post. You need to tell people what's going on, but you need to hide like mini conflicts inside, because the way your brain works psychologically is you want to close loops. So if I say like Leo, and I think Sean Purry said this, he said it very well. If I say like Leo did this, and then he did this, and then he did this, and then he did this, it's just one loop that's kind of, and you can predict when it's going to close, so you're not really interested. But if I say Leo did this, but then this happened, and why did that like then I'm opening separate loops and you're like, oh shit, like I need these loops to close. And so you keep watching. And so it's really a dance between more contextual information and like little baby conflicts. The best way to introduce the conflicts is usually saying but something. So, or like, you know, however something. So it's context and conflict. Then at some point you need to resolve, make sure all loops come closed. So like there needs to be a resolution. I think on the Leo Messi video is kind of like, you know, he signed with Inter Miami and that's good for him. It's good for Inter Miami. It's good for MLS. Like I kind of closed all the loops. And then this is something most people don't do, the last dab, which is the way to get videos to go really viral. The last thing you leave somebody with needs to hit them with like, whoa, like that was crazy, because your brain is so temporary that you won't really remember most of what I said, like, which is sad, but like, you'll know it was about Messi. You'll know Messi did something cool. You'll think maybe remember $1 billion, but you're not going to remember anything else. So I got to make sure the last line is just as good as the misdirection. And so the videos that I've done that have done the best have some like crazy thing in the last line. Like I made one where I changed my voice to Kanye and I like rapped the verse. Or actually, well, I did that, but a different video, because I knew I could do that with Kanye. I made a video about the music industry and AI, and it was all like, what's the music industry going to do? Like, why are they thinking about this? And the last line was me changing it to Kanye. Like I did this like flicker thing and I changed my voice, and that little bit, people are like, holy shit. And so many people commented and shared because they're like, the last line was crazy. Yeah. So that's how I break it down, is a good framework.
You know, it's interesting. Stephen Bartlett spoke about it in his book, which is psychologically it's proven that every interaction, like things that are memorable to us, we remember how it started. We remember either the best or the worst moment, and then how it ended.
Yeah.
And so he even gives this example. He's like, if you're going on a date, right, with someone, like a first date, the only things that you actually really need to nail so that it's memorable and they want to go out with you again is like the pinnacle moment. So either like, obviously you want it to be really good.
Yeah.
Like they're going to remember either it's really good or really bad, and then how it ended.
Yeah.
So if they had an amazing date, but then the ending was like kind of awkward, it actually in your brain, you don't even remember that much of the amazing stuff.
Exactly.
You just remember, oh, it was a bit weird.
You stamp it in like the weird category.
Yeah, it was the weird.
Exactly.
It was just weird. That's super interesting. Okay, so here's where I want to go with the short form stuff, and I want to bring it to what you were doing with your job, because I think there's a group of people out there who they've started doing the content stuff, and their dream is to go all in on that business and the content that they're building. However, there's almost like a pull and an addiction to staying in the job.
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to draw on two threads, actually. The first thing is that I feel like with short form content, there's a tendency for there to be a lot of like vanity metrics.
There is.
So like people are getting all these views, but it's not amounting to anything.
Yeah.
Like it's not building a brand. It's not making them money. It's not directing to a product. How what was the thought process of even being able to leave your job? Like, what were you seeing happen where you were like, okay, I'm not just getting views, I can leave. Like I know I want to leave, but practically, like in a money sense, like looking at my account, I can leave.
Yeah, I think there's a few things to this. One is like what your situation is already, and then two is like the signal of what you're doing and how money's coming in from it. So maybe I'll start with the second one first. So I was getting like 5 emails a week from brands being like, we'll pay you $3 to $5 grand to make a short for us. And I was getting those a lot, and I did a few. So I was like, okay, I can like do the math on this. Like it'll work if those keep happening. And I figured if my following just keeps going up, the money will just keep going up, and like those brands will continue to be there. So that was one signal, was like, I did start monetizing, right? So a lot of people will quit before they start monetizing or before they even know it's working. I wouldn't do that.
That's what I did.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it. Podcasting is different because you know it's going to take longer before, like we said, you know it's going to take a little bit longer before you get the signal.
Yeah.
But for me, I was like, I guess once I made the jump, I was like, I'm not going back. I'm never going back. So it was easier to make it a no-brainer if the money coming in was like gonna replace the salary or like even close to it or even part of it. So I think that matters. TikTok also launched their creator fund, which started paying me 60 cents per 1,000 views on qualified views. So for reference, like if I have a video that goes 10 million views, I make $6 grand on that, on one video. So I had a few that peeled pretty good. So I was like, okay, a combination of like that and the brand deals, and like I don't have any digital products yet. I don't have anything else, and it's like it's gonna work. So that was helpful. But I think the other side of it, what I said, is my situation already. Fortunately, like my wife is in consulting, so like I had a rare situation where like she could support us both if we had to, which is like a good backstop, I guess. So I had that, and like, you know, random stuff that I had been working for 8 years. So like I kind of built up to the point of getting to go. If you're 22 with no partner and you have no like, you know, that I understand, I'm privileged for that. So like if you're 22 and don't have that, take that off the table. But the other thing I said is really important, which is I made these videos with a full-time job for 6 to 7 months before leaving. And I started making money before I left. So that's one way to think about it. But to be honest, like if you have even a little, it's tough to put numbers on it because everyone's situation is different. But I think if you have between 6 and 12 months reasonable expenses, that's all you need to go. Because what you really, if you really want it, like if you want it bad, if you have that dog in you, then if it doesn't work, if 6 months you burn through your expenses and you make no money, you'll just go get another job similar to what you had, save up 6 months and go again. And just, you're probably better off ping-ponging through that in your 20s than getting tempted with the golden handcuffs where you like stick with a corporate job and like ladder up, and then your salary becomes like pretty good and you're like, oh, now it's a lot to lose. If you're entry level and like you're not making that much, but you like save aggressively, that ping pong, it'll work, right? Because you're, like we said, the fight or flight will kick in. You're so determined to not go back that you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So it's a combination. It's kind of like people don't leave soon enough for the money they have in the bank. If you have fortuitous situations like a partner or whatever, that helps too. But also, if you pick a vehicle where you can start monetizing more quickly, which I would say like YouTube short form would be that, then you can, justify it.
Yeah. I want to get into the specific moment when you left. Before we do that, talk to me about the brand deals. I think people have a lot of questions around that. Like,
yeah,
how did that even come about? And was there, looking back, is there a way that you can do your content, your short form content, where it's primed for brands to want to work with you and give you better rates?
Yeah. I mean, well, this was like semi-intentional, semi-not, but like my content niche, I describe as like new tech and cult brands. So like if someone were to describe me to someone else, what I think they'd say and what I hope they'd say is like, if you want to know about the cool shit going on, this guy will tell you in like a way that's fun and engaging, which means if you're any brand with any product that you want to be viewed as like cool shit going on, which is every brand, they're going to want me to cover it. So like on this content side, I want to be like one of the top 5 to 10 people that, users, consumers, ideally creators, builders, entrepreneurs segment look to be like, that guy knows what's going on and he tells it to us in a way that's unique and we like it. If that's true, every brand, every tech product, every whatever vertical I choose to pick will want to work with me. So I was kind of like, that's helpful. Like that's a little closer to like directly related than if I was doing like comic book videos and I had to like stretch to find ways that brands could interact. So that was helpful. That was like intentional. Like when I realized that this was kind of where my content authentically was going, I was like, all right, we're going to be good. The second thing is, basically before I left, I wanted to prove 2 things. 1, I could go viral at will. And 2, I can get paid for doing this. Those are the 2 things. So I figured out how to go viral at will after like 100 to 150 videos. So that was like 6 months. And then a couple times I reached out to brands because I wanted to test, like, if I just reach out and say I have 300,000 followers at the time and like I'll do a video for X, like will they say yes? So I got that to happen a couple times. Also, I got inbound from a few like big, like Adobe was one that came inbound and they paid like really well. So I was like, all right, I'm getting inbound from Adobe. I can go outbound and like get money relatively easily, and I can go viral at will. It's like, it's just too good not to bet on myself,
So, what, that's actually a really cool point, which is like, in a way, I don't know if curator is the right way to say it, but if you're the person that can like look in a field and decide what's cool,
taste.
Then there's taste.
Yeah.
Then there's instantly a money like value number attributed to that.
Exactly. All I want is to sharpen my taste to the point where my desired audience, which is builders, entrepreneurs, creators, trust the taste, and it's like aspirational the way I tell it. That's all I want. If I can do that, which I'm like on the path, but still have so long to go. But if I can do that, if I can become the way, like, I don't know if you know Peter McKinnon, but the way
Sounds familiar.
Anyone who's in photography, videography, like cameras will know Peter McKinnon. The way Peter McKinnon's taste for what's dope and the way he tells stuff what's dope in that area, everybody in videography, photography worships this guy. He can do anything. He's done crazy, like he has like jewelry brands, coffee brands. He goes and shoots concerts with huge bands. Like he can do whatever he wants because his taste. So I think what being an influencer, which I fucking hate that word, but like it's really a tastemaker, right? That's, if you're a tastemaker in whatever vertical you're in and authentically people respect your taste, you're set forever.
And then you would say the taste, if you had to almost define how you become a great tastemaker, you think it's the storytelling? Like, would that be the component, which is like, that's what allows you to have the influence? Like, that's why people listen.
The storytelling is not it. It's like a two-piece package. The taste comes from identification, like finding the needles in the haystack. So it's like, the scanning and picking is the taste. The storytelling is the packaging. So it's like, I'll find what's cool and I'll tell you about it in a way you like. You can tell people about stuff in a way they like, but if you don't find what's cool, you have no taste. You can find what's cool, but if you don't have any way to tell people, you're just like, a cool tastemaker that nobody follows. If you put them together, it's extremely valuable. So I was kind of like, you can't buy taste. You can't wake up and have taste. You have to like cultivate taste over time, which a lot of it is just like looking at huge amounts of information and trying to pick out the interesting stuff. So I knew like I couldn't create taste in one night. But I knew the easier thing to create was like how to become a storytelling savant. So I was like, if I can just become a storytelling savant, my taste will come over time. When they come, maybe it's 2 years, 5 years, and like it's iterative, but like when it gets to the point where it's people actually trust my taste, I'll have already become a storytelling savant. I can sell anything, either my products or brands that I love.
That's powerful. Okay, I'm curious, when you get into those conversations with brands, what are they telling you the reason is they want to work with you? So like I get the taste thing, but is there like a metric? Is there something they said where they're like, okay, this is why we're willing to give you this money? Like what's the thing that truly matters?
Usually it's nothing definitive, to be honest. And I think that's why there's a lot of money out there for creators. Usually the reason they reach out is either I made a video about their brand permissionlessly for free that went viral, or I made a video about their category. I made a bunch of videos about their category that went viral. And they're doing their job, like the marketer PR person is doing their job, like scanning who's talking about this. And so because I can go viral, saying I go viral at will is like pretty egotistical. Like that's not completely true. Like if you look at my videos, I haven't had a mega viral one in a couple weeks. So it's not like really, it's not like really true.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's not like really true. I can go viral at will with certain topics, let's say. But like when those people reach out, they see all the times that I've gone viral in that category, and then they see me as someone with taste who can storytell in that niche. So AI tools is kind of like the first one that really ripped, because I had like a phase where I was just like, let me just hammer AI for a while and see if I can, make content here. So that's one thing. And then, but there's not really like a threshold of metrics. Like what really happens, if you really want to know the behind the scenes, this is what I think is going on. Not to like blow anyone's spot, but like, fuck it. I think what happens is, let's say Adobe's releasing a new tool. Adobe will set a budget. Let's say it's like $1 million PR budget. They'll hire a PR firm. They'll tell the PR firm, yo, go spread this $1 million around the tastemakers in AI up to your discretion. We want, and then like report us back the cumulative metrics of how the campaign did. So what the PR team will go do is they'll reach out to me. They'll reach out to a bunch of other people that based on how many followers we have and like how well our videos have done, we'll have like kind of like rates in a range. They're adding those people up to get to the $1 million. Then we all make our videos. Now, if mine doesn't do well in that one wave, but someone else's does, it'll smooth out in the cumulative metrics. If mine does well, someone else's doesn't, whatever. So they'll run the campaign, maybe they'll get 50 videos, and then they'll take some of the money and they'll run paid ads against the videos. So like, let's say I was able to get 500,000 views with like pretty high engagement on my own. They'll then take my video, put paid ads behind it, and then my video will look like it has 4 million views, but really it only earned like 500,000. They bought the rest. That really smooths out the cumulative metrics when they report back. Yeah. So, and I'm sure they're splitting it out like organic versus paid, but at the end of the day, like Adobe doesn't have time to know who every tastemaker is, negotiate every video deal. So they farm it out to a PR team. And what I think is happening is a lot of these brands are doing that. A lot of these PR teams have these huge, buckets of money, and then they're paying influencers with it. Yeah. And that, there's nothing wrong with that. Like that is how the industry works. But I think there's more efficient ways for brands. I'm actually working on with a buddy. I'm trying to build a tool that can help do this more efficiently for brands in one way. So I'm sure there's others, but that's kind of how it works. And then they reach out. They're like, to get super tactical, they reach out. They're like, we like the content you made. We want to do a deal. Here's how much we'll pay you per video. We want to do 2 videos, 3 videos, here are the terms. And the terms are just like, you put our link make the video, put our link in your bio, do the hashtags, and then that's it. Yeah.
The way that you broke it down, it reminds me something that I read on your newsletter as well, which is the creator in residence. The way that you broke down that whole process of how they do it, it actually clicks in my brain why the creator in residence makes sense for big companies. You want to break that down?
Yeah, that's what I want. So right now, and one of my like creator influences, Carl Shakur, he made a video about this a couple days ago where he's like, this might rub people the wrong way, but like, I really don't like brand deals, because what happens with these brand deals, the way they're constructed now is company reaches out, they'll say, we want you to make a video about X, but you got to send it to us a few days in advance, and like we review it and we'll give you edits and notes and we got to negotiate the contract. By the time it's all said and done, like it took so much creative energy and time for me, who I could have just sat down and peeled it off in one day and it would have gone viral if I had complete creative freedom. But instead it's this like purifying of the message and like channeling it down to this average product. That's why brand videos don't do that well, to be honest. So he was like, I don't really like these brand deal videos. I'm trying to monetize a different way. I kind of agree. Like I want to work with my favorite brands and I want to help them sell a shit ton, but I don't like the way that they go at it right now, which is very like hands-on, curating the message. Like anytime you say this is a collaboration with, no one's going to engage with it. Anytime, like, you know, it just doesn't work that way. So what I was thinking would be better is this creator in residence idea, which is what I really want is I want 5 to 10 companies that I really fuck with. So like, let's say Shopify, Google, you know, let's say Adobe, whatever, like big companies that I care about. And I basically want a contract in place that says, anytime you find something interesting that we did, you have full creative license to rip a video on it. And if it hits certain metrics, we'll pay you at this rate. If it doesn't hit the metrics, we won't pay you. And we'll only do like a max of X per quarter. And, you know, we can renegotiate the rate every quarter, like if my following goes up. But what that allows for me to do is like be creatively untethered to anything. And if I see something interesting, I'll be like, oh, sick. I'll have extra motivation because if it doesn't hit the metrics, I don't get paid. But it allows me to get branded deals that keep me alive without having to do the negotiation every time and the back and forth and like them take creative control and the videos not do well because of that. So I think this idea of like, well, I guess there's that. And then this idea of where I have free range to do whatever I want and the deals are in place where like they automatically get facilitated so both sides don't have to deal with the overhead. That's pretty dope.
Yeah.
That's where I want it to go.
Yeah, that's sick. And actually, I worked in marketing at a few startups, and like that would like make so much sense.
Yeah, because then as a startup, it's almost like a sponsorship for F1 or whatever, where it's like Adobe's like, these are our 10 people. These are our 10 guys and girls that like we have as creators in residence. They have full reign. Like if you see something from them about us, it starts to build this like interesting creator brand dynamic. And like as a creator, maybe I only have, 5 to 10 of these. I get sent free product. I feel like part of the team, like, or as in golf where like, you're like, oh, is this person a Nike golfer? It's like, there's only 10 of those and they wear Nike shit all the time and they talk about Nike and they're in the commercials. Like, I think that's how creator brand partnerships should move. Cause right now it feels extremely transactional and it's not fun for the creator.
Yeah. Thing is, you want the creator in their element, right? Which is being creative.
Yeah.
So you want to create the system that allows them to be creative. That's the whole game.
Yeah.
Okay, here's where I want to move, and we can end here actually, which is, so you get to a point where you have, and I think it was actually making sense. It was aligning in a few categories, right? So in a practical sense, your ability to make money, your ability to get views on your content, you were very confident about. And then in terms of your mindset, you would kind of reach this threshold where it was like negative returns, you being at your job. Like it was like detrimental.
Yeah.
In terms of your creativity, your time, freedom, all of those things. Like it was time to make the jump.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So it made sense across both axes why you had to do this thing, why you had to leave. I think there's a lot of people out there that it makes sense why they should leave. They still struggle. I'm curious, was there like a struggle for you in any way? Was there a difficulty in handing in that final like notice of like, I'm out?
No, not at all. I wanted out of there, dude, from the second. There was maybe like a 12-month period at the beginning of building that like little startup on my own where I was like, this is cool, this is fun. But pretty quickly you realize you have no upside. And for some reason, my brain doesn't work well when I don't have unlimited upside. I just don't I can't bring myself to go all in when I don't have the upside, which I guess is like a good signal that I should be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because some people don't care about the upside. They're just like, they want stability, and that's a really good candidate for a corporate role. So yeah, for me, I was like, I got to get out of there. And we were talking about this before. I think a lot of people overstate the risk of leaving, and they undervalue what they could get by leaving. So a way to think about it, maybe in like a frame that if I would have heard this, I would have left a while before. So like, first of all, when you leave, let's say I was into consulting, right? When I quit, let's just say the worst case scenario is what I try to do doesn't work and I burn through all my money. There's almost 100% chance that I could go to any consulting firm at that level or one step below and get a job easily, because I have the resume credentials to do it. It's not as though it was rare for me to get that job. Maybe it was rare for me to get out of undergrad, but once you're in the job for a few years, that check mark proves that you should be able to get that job. So there really is no risk, career risk, let's say. Maybe you're behind your peers, I guess, but that's some bullshit that people just make up. That's one. Two is, and this is a really important point. Most people are mailing in at their job, let's just say. And when you mail it in, you're not really compounding your skills. There are some jobs where you're growing skills at a rapid rate, but let's just assume those people like their job. So for the majority of people, they're mailing it in. They're working 5 hours a day. They're on their couch sticking around. They don't really care. When you leave your job, you have, or at a corporate job, at the end of the rainbow, you have no asset to sell. There's nothing of value, and you could be well, my skills are of value, but you've been mailing it in and not really compounding skills. So you have no asset. Versus if you go on your own and you build something, even if it fails, you can sell that asset. For me, I wouldn't want to do this, but I could sell the Kallaway channels to someone for some dollar. They're worth more than zero. And so it's even if you make the argument that you're compounding skills at a job, you are also compounding skills on your own. So let's just say the compounding skills are the same. At the end of the rainbow for the job, you have nothing to sell, which means there's no cash flow mechanism for you to continue earning. That's why you're on the job treadmill forever. Starting your own thing, you earn the skills, but you also have some asset. A lot of times that asset can be sold, even if it's a website, a blog, you can sell it for 15, 20 grand, 30 grand, 50 grand. There's an asset there. So it's not even, that would be in favor for leaving. So I think the combination of you can get the job back whenever you want, and it's actually more financially beneficial for you to leave and have an asset that you could sell potentially versus not. To me, it's we were saying this before. This is how I think of it. If you have, where's my camera? That's a rapid thing. If you have the dog in you, you owe it to yourself and your family, and I would say the world, to take a swing. Because the way the world moved forward was pioneers and innovators bet on themselves to build stuff to push it forward. Not everyone, almost no one has that in them. But if you have it in you, you owe it to the world and your family and yourself to take a swing. You really do. And that's how I view it. It's tough to sit here and say that when my actions for the first 7 years were to be in this corporate hellhole. But I've now seen the light and realize that there's two types of people. There's either you can be an entrepreneur and want to be, or you don't. And if you do want to be, you owe it to yourself to leave.
Yeah. You know what the thing is for me, and my opinions on it have changed somewhat because I think the entrepreneurship thing, I think it is for a certain type of personality, but I think it is genuinely difficult. It is very difficult. And there are certain things, and this would be interesting actually for a separate conversation, but there's certain things about a job that make your life a lot easier. You don't even realize.
Mouse mover by chance?
What did you say?
Mouse mover?
Yeah.
You just sit at home with move. A lot of people have move mouse on, where
so it's just they're active.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the thing, if I was just going to say it quickly, the thing that surprised me the most, I actually learned it about myself having left my job, is I realized I was kind of addicted to validation. There's a lot of ways when you have a job, you get validated in small ways that you're not even really cognizant of.
Yeah.
So for example, just the fact that you get paid is validation. Like once you start doing your own thing, you could objectively, in terms of your inputs, in terms of your discipline, how you're committing yourself, how you're learning, the intensity, your productivity, you can be hitting tens across the board, make no money. Like no one cares. Like no one cares. You're not getting paid just for showing up and like being present. There actually has to be like a result. And so you have to start to validate yourself. And that's why I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have this intense self-belief is like, they need to be able to tell themselves that I'm doing the right thing, because the world, a lot of the time when you're an entrepreneur, isn't telling you that.
Yeah.
Like you're not getting paid. You're not getting the $1 million checks and all the adulation that you see of the people that are at the top, especially when you're starting. And so for me, I think what you said is correct, which is like, if you have that dog in you though, like if you have that in you and it's truly in you, then it gets to the point where you're like, you just don't want to live with regrets.
Exactly.
And that's the biggest one. Is like you didn't have the heart to take a swing on yourself.
That's the other thing about the job is unearned validation makes you soft. And at jobs, you're basically you're getting validation for like not necessarily having skills that could make money in the market, you know, like in the free market. So yeah, man, I think that's a good message for entrepreneurs. The other thing I was going to say before we leave, do you want to talk about Blueprint, like what it is, just so, because I think if someone's listening to this point, they probably would be, they're going
to want to follow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Give it a quick breakdown.
So my whole thing with Blueprint was like we said before, if people who have succeeded 5-10 years in the future, they're not going to have a grip on the tactics in today's time that would work for a beginner, because they did it 10 years ago. So they probably don't even remember the tactics because there's so much time that's passed. But even if they did remember, those tactics are probably outdated. So it was really important that I documented what I'm doing from the beginning, because when in 4 years, when this shit's working big, I don't want someone to watch me and say, yeah, but look at everything you have. Like, what do I do at the beginning? What you'll be able to do is scroll to the top of Blueprint 1 and read my, not only like what the playbook, the money I made, the growth, but like my actual thoughts. Like there have been blueprints that I've written where I'm like sad and struggling and like don't know what to do and like trying to reason through a problem in words. And the reason people don't make documentative content at the beginning is because it takes a lot of time. Like it takes 4 to 5 hours to write one of those every single week. And that doesn't show up on the stat sheet because those aren't the kind of thing that are going to get shared or go viral. But it's like really important that I write that down in terms of like, so basically what it is every single week, I basically write like an investor letter to myself that I want to become like a Bible for creators and entrepreneurs who can, you know, you can like invest in my story. It's not all like, what have I done? It's kind of like lessons you can take out of it. I'm curious like how you would frame it now that you've read a few, but also like I'm being as transparent as possible with like the exact dollars I'm earning, the exact growth, what videos I made at what time and what I thought about them. So I'm curious what you think of it after diving in.
Yeah, you know what? I think it was like, for me, the thing that I liked, and you know, let me zoom out first, which is what you said is exactly correct. The people that are at the top of the industry, right? Whether it's business, athletes, I don't know, any industry, they're at the top. They're the names that everyone recognizes. When they do an interview, they get millions of views. Here was the reason I got frustrated, because I love listening to that sort of content. I love studying the greats. The reason I got frustrated was their advice is so high level. It almost made me feel like they're not sharing the secrets.
Yeah.
But I don't actually think it's that. I think they're so far removed from the person that's just starting out. And so they kind of tell you the stuff what they tell you is true. Like discipline matters, being consistent matters, working hard matters. So they can tell you the high level stuff that got them to where they are. They can't give you the detail that will help you do it right now.
Exactly.
And the reason they can't do that is because it's a different game. Someone that got successful in business 30 years ago cannot give you the blueprint on how to do it now, because there's a bunch of different factors that are present now that weren't present then.
Yeah.
And you made a really good point, I think, in your blueprint, which is like, it's not about reading it and then copying exactly what you did, but because it goes into such granular detail and it shares so much information, you can start to see the way of thinking, which is way more important.
Exactly.
It's not what you did, it's like how you went about it.
Yeah.
And then you can take that framework, that way of thinking, start to implement that into how you're doing things, and that's it. That's the magic.
Exactly. That's why, like, to me, advice, almost all advice is not helpful at all, because even if it's tactical, it's given by someone in a different scenario, or even if they're the exact same age and, you know, income level.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. Exactly. So to me, like, giving advice is dumb. Instead, give me a window into what you're doing. Like, let me watch you. And if you're at the, basically all I wanted when I started was, I want someone 2 steps ahead of me. Like if the game is 1,000 steps, I want someone 2 steps ahead of me with a window that I can just watch them. And I will pull myself from what they're doing. If they do that, but I don't like it, I won't take it. If they do that, but I do like it, I will take it. Nobody gives a window. Instead, they're trying to sell courses with high-level advice or even tactical advice that isn't relevant. That's why courses don't really work that well. Like, there are some, but they don't really work. So I was like, all right, if instead of going and making a course, which that's a whole nother thing. Like, I really don't want to have to go on the info products train.
Yeah.
So like, instead of going down that route, let me just take a rag and clear the window so you can watch what I'm doing, and I'll be as explicit and detailed as possible. And those are points in time. So like 5 years from now, a beginner can go back and maybe the advice or maybe what I did isn't relevant anymore. Like, there might be a new platform, but at least for like this period, there will always be something relevant for someone who's like 2 steps behind. And I don't really see that. I don't see anybody else doing it that way.
Yeah. And you know what I loved? I had exactly the same insight. And that's why right now, my team and I were working on like a documentary, which is like,
Nice.
Here's the video window of exactly what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, it's dope.
And the thing that really inspired it, I watched the Genius documentary on Netflix. It's like, I think it's a 3-part docuseries on Kanye's life.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it. All the parts are interesting, but it's the first 2 parts and the first part in particular that is the most captivating. It's way better than anything.
Exactly.
And it was when he wasn't successful at all.
Yeah.
Like, he had just moved to New York. The guy's got the braces in. The jaw's kind of messed up. Like, he's a nobody.
Yeah.
That is the most interesting content because it's relatable. It's authentic. It stands out because of those things.
Once you're a somebody, you can never be a nobody again. So you either have this chance to document, or, you know, like if you're starting, you have right now to document, or you'll never be able to get that raw. Like, I wish I was doing it on video. I wish I did it from day 1 instead of day like 270 or whatever. But like, you know.
Yeah. You know what? Here's where I want to end, which is, if we went back in time, we went in a time machine 12 months ago, you would still be at Deloitte. You wouldn't have posted any short form content. We then fast forward to where we are now. You have all of these views. You're a full-time creator. You have these viral playbooks. I want you to fast forward 12 months from now. What reality are we looking at for Kane Kallaway?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of paths that can go. Like, I try not to look too far in the future, only because all I can control is like, can I get a good rep in today? Can I get a good rep in tomorrow? But if I had to manifest it forward, so my whole step plan was find something I was authentically interested in, start making content on it. Find that intersection that resonates. Earn money from that intersection. Take that money and start automating that content. Free up my time with the automation to launch more content. Eventually I'll have a whole engine. So like 12 months from now will probably be the shorts, a podcast. I'll be making YouTube videos, those 3 probably. And a lot of that will be, when I say automated, just like it won't all be me editing every second like I'm doing now. And then I think I'll be on the path to having clarity around like what my first product-based business will be, either physical or digital products. So I don't want to get too far ahead of the horse, but I'm just going to continue compounding this wheel. I think another like lesson, I guess, is a lot of people have success in one channel and then they're like, what else can I do? And they take that effort and they allocate it back to something from scratch, but they forget the golden goose. Like they stop nurturing the golden goose. And so what happens is their original thing plateaus, their new thing doesn't work because it's really hard to get multiple things to work. And they go back and they're like, oh, what do I do? Like I'm stagnant. They're mad. So I'm not going to let the golden goose get stagnant, which right now for me is short form video.
Yeah.
So, but who knows? Like new platforms could emerge. You know, I try to be. Who said this? I'm really bad at attributing quotes. I'm good at remembering them, but bad at attributing them. Like open to everything, attached to nothing. So that's kind of how I look at it. Is like, I don't know what will happen. All I'm trying to do is like sharpen the knife, sharper, sharper, sharper. Every rep I take is like better, 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 and we'll let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's been a pleasure.
Hell yeah. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel. We're having fire conversations every week on the podcast. Before we end the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Free Agency. What if I told you there is a good chance you're leaving money on the table in your career? It would kind of annoy you a bit, right? Well, Free Agency aims to stop that. They represent and manage talent in the tech industry. Here's how they do it. First, they provide you with a dedicated talent agent. Think about this as your career quarterback. They understand you and your career goals. Based on that understanding, they bring you suitable interviews at top firms. You focus on smashing the interview, and together with their network, research, negotiation expertise, they will make sure you get a top of market salary. Stop job searching alone and start building your dream career today with Free Agency.